let's get the second half of the Prelude in C by Bach figured out. And if you haven't guessed, this is training for your final. It's getting you to show that you can read bass clef and treble clef, and that you can look at a group of notes and determine what kind of chord it is. So by way of review, that the second half of these measures are identical to the first half, so we're just going to be looking at these notes right here, and let's get started. So the first thing you do is in your head or on paper is to name the notes, and I'm going to do it on paper so you can see it this way. I highly recommend you do the same on the tests. Have some scratch paper nearby or when you're doing this worksheet, because until you get good at this and can juggle these in your head, you want to get the information out of your head so you can focus on a single task. For instance, you don't want to be trying to figure out what kind of triad this is if you're still trying to remember what the names of the notes are or what kind of seventh it is if you're trying to juggle all the other information in your head. So we just put this down. I'm going to go pretty quick through this. It's up to you to stop and make sure that you understand what's going on, and also raise questions in the reporting quizzes that you do, right? So a C in bass clef, a G in bass clef, a B flat, a C, and an E. These are repeats. So this is a C chord, C, E, G, B flat, so it's got a seventh on it. You might be tempted to think it's an E chord because there's an E, G, B, but if it had a seventh on it, it'd be E, G, B, D, and that's not what we have here. So this is a C with some kind of seventh on it, and C, E, G is a major triad, B flat is a whole step below C, right? There's my C right there. There's my B flat. So a major triad plus a whole step is a dominant 7 chord, and the symbol for that is just C in the 7 right there. Okay, we're going to go on. Oh, by the way, dominant 7 chord. So this is probably a 5, and if you think of that as 5, what's your 1? F. So I think that we're probably going to an F chord. Let's check it out. There's an F, there's an F, there's an A, there's a C, and there's an E. Well, F, A, C, and the 7th is E. It's not an A chord, A, C, E, G, because the F is there, not the G. So this is an F, and it's some kind of 7, and if you go major 7, or sorry, major triad, F, A, C, and E is a half step below, that's a major 7th, then this is a major 7th chord, which means it has a major triad, and the 7th is a major 7th or a half step below the root. That doesn't count. That's a very loud truck. All right, keep going. All right, we have an F sharp right here. We have a C right there. We have an A right there. We have a C right there, and we have an E flat right there. This is repeat of those notes, and these don't count because they're also a repeat. So it's also an F, A, C, E chord, but it's different. It's some kind of F sharp chord with a 7th. And now we have to use our backwards sort of analyzing and comparing skills. I'm going to just do this up here because there's more space, but it goes to right there. If I have F, A, C, E, I should know that this is an F major 7. Okay, we just did it, plus it's one of the standard ones with no sharps and flats. Since this is an F sharp chord, I'm going to sharp everything. F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, and E sharp. And that is an F sharp major 7, because if you sharp everything, the quality is the same. All right, now that we know that F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, and E sharp is a major 7th chord on F sharp, let's compare what we have. We have an F sharp, an A, and a C. Don't worry about the E flat for a minute. Let's compare that against F sharp, A sharp, and C sharp, which we know is a major triad. Well, this has the sharp gone there, so that's an F minor chord if it was F sharp, A, C sharp. And then it's got the sharp gone there, so we've lowered the 5th there. So we lowered the 3rd and we lowered the 5th. This is an F sharp diminished chord, okay? There's only 2 kind of 7th chords that have diminished triads in them. One is half diminished and the other one is fully diminished. The difference between them is if this E flat right here is a whole step or 1.5 whole steps below. If it's a whole step below, that's a minor seventh, and this is a half diminished. If it's 3 half steps below, then it's a diminished seventh, and we have a diminished 7 chord. So here's my F sharp right here, right there, and here's my E flat right there. And if I go 1, 2, 3, that's 3 half steps. That's a diminished 7 chord because it's got a diminished triad, F, A, sharp A and C, and then 3 half steps down to the root. So the answer is F sharp diminished 7. Okay. Now remember, diminished 7th chords are actually number 7 in the scale usually, and they're going to point us to 1, right? Now that's not always 100% true, but if we saw this in isolation, we might think we're going to a G chord. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to be the case, but in this case it's not actually. I guess I'm hedging my bets for you right there. But that's the expectation, and if we're checking for that, then we quickly know whether we have it or not. Now, if we look here, this is an A flat, that's an F, that's a B, and that's a D. And that doesn't look like a G chord to me. There's not one in there, so we're going to have to go looking for somewhere else. There's reasons why it doesn't go to G, but we can't explain it in this class right now. But basically, if you move down by half steps on diminished 7th chords, it's like going down a 5th, but I don't have time to explain why that is right now. It's okay. It's a very advanced topic. You have to get to second year music major theory to get that completely explained. But is it an A chord, A, C, E, G? No. Is it an F chord, F, A, C? Nope. Is it a B chord, B, D, F, A? It is, B, D, F, right? And then the A flat. So this is some kind of B 7th chord right there, okay? And if we spell our chord, B, D, F, that's a diminished triad. And then my A flat, again, if you can do this in your head, great. But if you can't, let's just show you right here again. You want to have, okay, so B, D, and F. That's our diminished triad. And the other note is an A flat, which is right there, right? A flat. So we count down. If it was only 1, 2, just the plain old A, it would be a diminished triad and a minor 7th, which would be half diminished. But it's not. It's 3 half steps down. 1, 2, 3. That's a diminished 7th. Diminished triad plus a diminished 7th is a diminished 7 chord. Right? So let's check it out. Diminished 7th. All right. Again, we should be thinking, gosh, that looks like a 7 in the number on the scale, and we should be going to C. And we will get there eventually. It's right here. I'll just skip ahead and show you. C, E, G. This is an E. That's a G right there. This is a C chord right here, C major, right? Now, what happens here is before we go 7, 1, we know that 7 and 5 substitute and do the job for each other, and that's what this is doing. Before it goes 7, 1, it'll jump back to a 5 chord here. This is going to be a G chord. There's a G and an F. That's my 7th. G, B, and D right there. Okay? Now, if you're having problems keeping up, maybe you're not reading bass clef well enough. Maybe you're using like a phone to look at this and it's too small a picture, and that would be too bad as well. But these are all sort of physical circumstances that you can, mitigate with better technology. Or maybe you're just having problems reading certain notes, ledger lines and things. Get better with time. Suffer through it right now. Right, GBD is a G chord with the F is the 7th, and major triad minor 7th is a dominant chord. This is my 5. This was my 7 chord right here. It swaps into a 5 chord right there, and eventually goes to a 1 chord, which is right there. Not that you have to write these numbers in, but I just want to point them out because these have structural meaning and purpose in there, right? We're being dragged around a bunch of different keys right now, and it says, hey, let's make F the 1 chord for a minute. So we go 5, 1. And then let's slide these into the diminished, morphing that into that, and then ride this out, and that becomes 7, which is 5, and then 1 right there. All right, let's keep going. G, D, G, C, and F. I'm glad we got to this one together. This is Bach messing with us. The C is a non-chord tone right there. Okay, it's holding through. He's using that. So let's just forget about that for a minute, because he really is, well, maybe we don't have to forget about it. Let's see. Normally you'd want G, B, D, F, and that would be G7, right? And that would be your 5 chord. What he's done here is he's taken this F and shoved it up to the C. So instead of a 3 or a third, it's a 4. So you can either think of this as a non-chord tone, which is just being held there for color, or you can call this a G7 sus or sus4 chord. Remember we played the C7 sus chord or sus4 chord? It's when you take the third of the chord and push it up a step and hold it out as a 4th right there. That should resolve for us pretty quickly here. So basically this C held over and became a suspended note that will resolve down there. So G and a D and a G and a B and an F, and that's my G7 right there. So he's just having fun with us, okay? Going on to the next line here. Now I did told you that some places along here there's some things that are not part of the chord. There's a reason why this G is holding out here so long, even when it doesn't belong in the chord. And the reason for that is, in this music, sonically, it's signaling that we're coming back to the key of C and we're coming to the end of the piece. At this time period, this was something you did. It was called a pedal tone, because you play this on the organ, and the low notes are played with your feet on pedals below the keyboard part. And so it was called a pedal tone because you'd put your foot down on the 5 note in the key, which would say, after we've done all this playing around up here in other keys, get ready, here's my 5, we're coming back to 1, it's gonna happen. And so sometimes it's in the chord, like this, and sometimes it's not, and you have to learn to ignore that. Similarly down here at the very end, there's the C, which is the 1, right, saying we're home, we're home, we're home. And even though this is not going to be a C chord right here, it holds that out there as a way of signaling to us that we are coming to the end of the train ride. It's going to be all about being home right there. But let's keep going then. So I'm going to ignore the G. Here's my E flat, here's my A, there's my C, and there's my F sharp. All right, EGB, no. ACE, maybe, but ACEG, right, should be, and it's not, right? CEG, no. FACE flat, FACE flat. So this is an F sharp chord of some kind with the 7th. And if we did this, you'll find that FAC is normally major, and if you do F sharp AC, that's diminished. We've seen this before. And then the E flat we've looked at before is 3 half steps below F sharp. So this is a diminished triad and a diminished 7 right there. So we would expect to go to a G chord after this. Bach is going to kind of fake us out, because there's my G chord right there, right? F sharp would be like the 7 of that. But he's going to interim put a different chord in here before he makes it out there. Again, there's historical explanations for that, but let's just identify. So this E flat is gone now. It's just plain old E. So we have a G, and we have an E, and we have a G, and we have a C, and we have an E. That looks like a C chord to me, C major, right? And finally we get our G chord. G, D, G, oh, there's my sus again, right there, like before. G7, sus 4, right? And then looks like it does exactly the same thing it did up here, G7. And then finally, down here on our last line, we have a C, C, G, E, B flat, C, E, G, B flat, which is a major triad and a minor 7, which is C7. I'd expect we'd see this would be like our 5 chord, so we'll be going back to an F chord probably here. We have a C, we have a C, we have an F. I'll give you a second to count that. How do you know that so quick? Well, there's my C, down a third, and down a third, right? C is the 5th, third root, F-A-C, right? Plus I'm expecting it, I can see it. This is an F major chord right here, right? Until we get to down here in the second half, and it's got a D, F-A right here with a C underneath it. This is a D minor 7. And then here, I said we could ignore this. So we're coming home. Let's check out our last chord. It should be a C chord, C, C, E, G, C. This is a C major chord right here, right? So what usually binds us all together, it's our 5 chord. Ignore this C, it's just signaling it's the end of the piece. But I have a G and a B and a D and an F, and this goes up and down and up and down, and I also have a B right there, and this is G, B, D, F, like that. G7, okay. This whole piece is made up of 5 and 1s with silly little changes in key and occasionally 7s sliding us here and there. And at the very end, after we've played around, there's this low droning out G that says, hey, that's 5 in the key and we're coming back, and then finally it goes to C right there. So is there an assignment? No, you just did it with me. But this is training for you to say, can I look at notes? Can I spell and interpret chords out of them? And do I know my triads and my 7th chords anatomy and spelling well enough that I can figure out what these things are? We will do a little more targeted work on this, but it's coming up on the final. Maybe not in this great sort of breadth and length, but you're going to have to be able to interpret notes and spell chords